Welcome to this bonus edition of Your Health, Your Wealth. I'm your host, Dr. Eddie Patton, and I had such a riveting and wonderful conversation with Dr. Sandberg, pediatric neurosurgeon, that I wanted to talk a little bit more about specifically head trauma. And one of the things that I do along with my day job is I work with the TMA, and I'm the current chair of the Council on Health Promotions. And within that council, we oversee a couple of programs. We do oversee a book share program where we give out free books to kids. There's a Walk with the Doc program, which is a program where you can set up community walks with local physicians. And there's a program that I want to talk about today that's called Hard Hats for Little Heads. And Hard Hats for Little Heads was established or launched 30 years ago in 1994. And the goal was to reduce the amount of head injuries, head traumas from bicycles, scooters, skates, and so forth. And by wearing a helmet, you can prevent, I think some of the statistics I saw were over 85% of head trauma. So I appreciate Dr. Sandberg for agreeing to stay on and talk a little bit more about head trauma. So as a pediatric neurosurgeon, I know you've seen your share of bicycle accidents and individuals who weren't wearing helmets. So yeah, what have you seen in your experience?
Well, first, I want to thank you. This is so important. I can't overstate the importance of what you're doing, and I can't compliment you enough on you've got a busy neurology practice, you've got your own family, you've got other things going on, you're doing all these amazing podcasts, and you're giving your own time and your own energy to try to save the lives of children. And that's exactly what you're doing with this program, this Hard Hats program. I've been a pediatric neurosurgeon for over 2 decades, and I've worked at some of the busiest pediatric level 1 trauma centers in the country. Most recently at Children's Memorial Hermann Hospital, which is one of the busiest level 1 trauma centers for children in the country. I've seen countless children die or have devastating neurological outcomes when they fall off a bike or get hit by a car when they're riding a bike or a scooter or an ATV, etc., and they're not wearing a helmet. I have not, in my over 2 decades as a pediatric neurosurgeon, seen a devastating outcome or a death from head trauma in a child who's wearing a helmet.
Wow.
And yet, helmets are underutilized. I mean, look, I rode my bike to school, right? When I was a kid, I didn't wear a helmet. Nobody was wearing helmets. We were not educated. But now the public needs to be educated. I'll tell you a story. I was just on my book tour. I was invited to Stanford University, and I was there for a book event. So I was on campus at Stanford University. Stanford, as you know, is one of the finest educational institutions in our country.
Absolutely.
Right? So you would think people who go there are pretty smart. I'm telling you, there are so many kids, college kids, riding bicycles on that campus, and I would say 1 out of 50 was wearing a helmet. Right? Wow. We are not doing a good job getting the word out, or kids are not believing us, but we have to do better, and I applaud your efforts.
I think kids are invincible. My 13-year-old son, for his last birthday, he needed a bigger bike. So we bought him a bike, and he's ready to just go at it. He wants to ride to the park and play baseball with his friends. And, I always tell him, put on a helmet, and he's like, what? Oh, no, Dad, that's not cool. And it's not so much that I'm worried about him, but nowadays people are riding around. There's text messaging there. They're not paying attention. When you're exposed like that, going against a vehicle on a bicycle, the impact of just head trauma and what that can do. What are some things that can happen if you do get knocked off your bike or hit with a bike?
Yeah, I mean, falling off a bicycle is actually a decent distance to a concrete pavement, and you hit your head hard, a whole number of things can happen. You could be lucky and nothing could happen, or at the most extreme, you could hit your head hard enough that you could die of a brain hemorrhage.
Wow.
You can fracture your skull. The skull fractures can be minor or they can be quite serious. I've seen big indentations of the skull that need major surgeries to elevate the skull or to remove blood clots. And some kids, are never the same child after that head injury.
Wow. And that is amazing. That's one of the beautiful things about this program, because we work with what's called a TMA Alliance, which are the husbands and wives of physicians they actually do programs where they actually fit the kids, because it's one thing to have a helmet, but I see kids riding around with unstrapped and just around where the helmet can come off, but making sure that you have, a properly fit helmet. So we work with churches, physician offices, and everyone to do programs to really hand out these helmets. And you mentioned it in your book as well, Brain and Heart, about the fact that unfortunately this does sometimes affect communities where people can't afford helmets. And so that's what I like about this program, is that it's giving out free helmets to the community.
It's an amazing, amazing service. And I completely agree with you that if the helmet is unstrapped or if it's ill-fitting, it's not going to be as effective. And there are some families who, a bicycle helmet can range in price from about $45 to, higher, depending on how fancy it is. For some families, that's a lot of money when you're struggling to make ends meet and you're living paycheck to paycheck. This is an essential purchase if you can afford it. And I am applauding any program that gives it to a family that can't afford it to protect the safety of their children.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sandberg, for being with me today and talking about this very important topic. It's concussions. We hear about concussions so much with football and sports and everything else, but I do think it's equally important that we talk about simple ways of preventing these traumatic head injuries in kids. And something as simple as wearing a bike helmet can go a long way.
It's a huge public health problem. It's not talked about enough, and this is an amazing program that you're pursuing, and I support it completely.
Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for tuning in for this edition of Your Health, Your Wealth. Share it with friends and family, and we look forward to talking with you more in future editions of the show.